morning glory. Say there, stop that yawning. A brand new day is dawning. Pull up the shade and let the sun come through. Good morning glory. Spend about an hour underneath a shower and keep on singing like the birdies do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Books of the Week, a very serious show on books that will make you rethink your slovenly ways and want to be more like my book critic at large, Steve Donahue in Boston, and myself, Jeffrey Mesterman, a librarian. It's truly a pillar of this community and many others. I'm starting this show in a very solemn way for a reason, Steve. I did meet up with our mascot last night, who we introduced in the last show. We had some time together, and things got. I'm ashamed. Things got out of hand. I'll just send the picture.
We lose more mascots that way.
I can't even explain myself. All I can do is, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, is what they tell me.
Yes. Or as the Cedarburg community at large has made clear to us in numerous emails, it's one thing to be in really bad taste. Just don't go vegetarian on us.
Absolutely. If that was my life, Steve, what's going on with you?
Just trying to recover my professional and personal and even spiritual dignity after that last episode of ours. I do not understand what that last episode was, but a whole bunch of people emailed me saying I want more. I don't understand that.
I think we can deliver. I suppose we must have it in our system. Well, by way of introduction, of course, this show, Books of the Week, beyond the other stuff, we talk about books, and we have we like to go through the library and maybe even a bookstore in a virtual audio sort of way and video as well. We like to start with a little nonfiction. We'll move over to fiction, and then we will do a wild card. This week, however, we decided to blow everything up. Recently, I watched Oppenheimer, so I have this itch to just nuke everything. We're going to do a full wild card episode today. That's right, folks. 10 books that I'm going to just hurl towards Boston. I'm hurling it eastward, and we'll see how it lands.
This is in partial response to a great number of you saying that you love the wild card episode, but this is not to be taken as any kind of incitement to a plebiscite of some kind. Just because you liked it doesn't mean we're going to keep doing it. If this show were dictated by what people like and don't like, it wouldn't be on the air.
We did take a meeting and said, look, people like that. And Steve and I both went, oh, how nice.
How nice.
Nothing rubs our rhubarb the wrong way than audience pleasure.
But you did speak up, and Caesar is turned to hear. You're doing all wild cards. So the obvious shtick here is that I don't know which books they are.
I have a stack right here.
For ahead of time, all we do ahead of time is crack each other up, which is a little side note to one of you that sent a little email to me saying all that business about how the camaraderie and the chemistry on air is totally natural. Methinks thou dost protest too much. To which I respond with, maybe learn another line of Shakespeare. Maybe instead of sticking to just the one.
Yeah, the minute anyone drops a methinks in regular conversation, I tend to just walk the other way. So, well, I think we better get busy. I see a pile here. We're going to start with I would say a very basic way to start, and this is actually a Library of America title that I just purchased. I'm trying to buy all of them because they're gorgeous and beautiful, and when I walk past them, I feel good. So Ursula Le Guin just found her way to the Library of America, and we have inside here Lathe of Heaven, Eye of the Heron, The Beginning Place, and Sea Road, Chronicles of Clatsand and Lavinia. So this is a lot. I mean, I'm kind of cheating here by giving you actually 5 in 1, but what are your thoughts on Miss Le Guin? What are your thoughts on Library America? And what about this?
Well, it's odd, but I want to applaud your instincts. I don't usually. This show is now littered with examples of
okay, this feels weird. I need a cocktail. All right. I'm uncomfortable.
Oh my God. Nevertheless, every library should have a big wall of Library America. They are fantastic.
Yeah.
They are fantastic. They are not done with any kind of editorial edge to them. They famously don't have long, windy introductions or academic slanted notes of any kind. They are mainly meant to just present you with well-curated texts from American literature. Yeah. And they're sewn binding. There are archival pages, so they're not going to yellow and brittle on the library's collection. They really do belong on the shelves of every library. They're good for students, but they're also good for general readers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is perfectly a case in point by this volume.
Absolutely.
Because Ursula Le Guin was, of course, a famous science fiction writer, science fiction and fantasy. And this volume is, I told myself when I got this volume that I would just read a bit. All of it is rereads for me. I told myself I would just read a bit. How'd that work out?
How'd that work out for you, Steve?
Not at all. I went straight through from beginning to end. Of course, The Lathe of Heaven is one of my favorite Ursula Le Guin novels.
Only one I've read. I've only read Lathe of Heaven. So.
It's a thin novel. It's not quite so intimidating as The Left Hand of Darkness or The Dispossessed, which are her two masterpieces. Yeah. It's about a man whose dreams change reality. And it's wonderfully, wonderfully done. But this volume also concludes with a volume that I hadn't read since it first came out, Lavinia.
Yeah.
Which is historical fiction, which Ursula Le Guin has never did, as far as I know, never did any other historical fiction. It's about a character in Virgil's Aeneid who never even gets a speaking line. I wasn't expecting it to be any good. I don't know why I wasn't, since this is a great author. And also, I was kind of expecting it happened before hashtag Me Too. And it certainly happened before hashtag Me Too degenerated into hashtag All Men Suck. It happened before that, but I was still kind of expecting that it would be a ridiculously, brainlessly strident feminist retelling of the Aeneid in which all the women are good and all the men are bad, just because of their dangly bits. And I should have known better, because Ursula Le Guin had no patience for such stuff, even when it was second-wave feminism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone who can read her, The Dispossessed or The Left Hand of Darkness and say this is someone knuckling out of the patriarchy isn't reading correctly. It's just, I found a lot more in it. I still think it's a weak novel, but I found a lot more in Lavinia than I did the first time.
Absolutely. Cool. Great. No, that's, I'm looking forward to working my way through it. It's funny with The Lathe of Heaven, you say, you have a character who dreams can affect reality. I know that is true science fiction because if that were true, and I'm still here, I figured your dreams would. I know you've dreamed regularly about my early demise.
We both of us dreamed about the Frankfurt Queen.
We did.
To be real. But that did affect reality.
Yeah, well, your dreams look something like this, though, Steve.
Oh. Oh my. You got it bad in Wisconsin.
She looks like hell. She's not coming on. She's not coming on today.
Sure, when you said Library of America and then you mentioned that the author was a woman, I thought sure you were going to mention one of the latest editions, Helen Keller.
I did say we haven't gotten that yet. I will be ordering it without a doubt. I was surprised. That's what's great about Library of America too, is the surprising turns they take. They did like a beautiful crime fiction of the 50s and 30s. It's just gorgeous, and you wouldn't expect that out of such a, on the surface haughty, and I love it.
Actually, it's their original anthologies that I end up liking the most.
Yeah.
Just across the board. They did one on nature writing. They did one on nautical writing. That's probably collectible now. It's amazingly good.
Sure.
And they're boxed anthologies, mystery stories, noir stories. They have 2 box sets of science fiction. All one.
Absolutely. So I even joined their dirty little club about 10 years ago, and I was getting them delivered to my house. That's what a victim I am to these guys. So moving on, because I'm supposed to be ruthless this episode, and I have yet to be. I can't believe I grabbed this, but here we are. A great author who probably the Library of America collection will be wonderful, and this guy too. We're going to start killing some witches. This is out in your neck of the woods, Steve. So,
yes.
What do we do about this guy right here?
Well, it isn't important what we do about Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly's a fairly open book.
That's true. That is true.
He's honest. A moron. He's a knuckle dragger. He's a brute.
Yeah.
I wasn't, for reasons that we need not get into on Books of the Week, I have my axes to grind with David Letterman. But like the rest of the entire world, I stood up and cheered when he had Bill O'Reilly on and looked at him and said, basically, you're just a goon.
You're just a goon.
And I hope my kid doesn't grow up to be like you.
Right.
And it wasn't scripted, and it wasn't prepared. It wasn't gone over in the green room. It caught Bill O'Reilly by surprise, and I cheered my head off.
Absolutely.
Bill O'Reilly is a known factor. No, the villain here is Martin Dugard, the guy who writes the books.
He's actually on the cover. You gotta look,
And he ought not to be taking the devil's money. He's been doing it for years now. I'm sure it's a very good living, but he ought not to do it. I read the first few, killing whatever books and thought, okay, is this some sort of a prank? There's a gross factual error on almost every page. And the interpretations, let's not even talk about the interpretations. And I was actually thinking for years, well, you got Bill O'Reilly in the room for a book meeting. He's a blowhard. He's not going to let you get a word in edgewise. I know you don't know what it's like to work with such a person.
I mean, must be awful for Mr. Dugard.
But I figured if he's taking meetings like that, he can't really be to blame. And then he wrote a book of his own, and it was just as bad. So he is to blame. He's to blame. This phenomenon of historians that can just be bought off the rack, integrity and all, ought not to exist. To our patrons, I should point out that if you want recommendations about the Salem witch craze, I would be happy to make them. There are a number of great books on the subject. Does the library have Stacy Schiff's book, The Witches?
Yes, we do.
That'd be a perfect place to start.
Okay.
You can put that down. And I don't mean if you're interested in the subject and can't put it down. I mean if you can put it down at all.
Yeah.
Whether you think you're interested in the subject or not, then I'll fire my producer.
We're in triple digits on that one.
Also, if you pick up The Witches by Stacy Schiff and you don't like it, I'll still consider firing my producer.
I love it. Damned if I do and damned if I do. So there we are. The Bill O'Reilly thing is wild. I was surprised that he was going after the Salem story just because it seemed weirdly out of character. And how is he going to link it to the GOP and conservatism? I don't know, but he will. That's If your patrons find these things enjoyable, I'm assuming you ordered it because they like these books. There's a large contingency who seems to enjoy. Yeah.
Those patrons who are listening, there are better books on this subject out there.
Yeah. I thought it'd be fun if the National Lampoon Company came out with a book like a spoof one, and it's called it like Killing Carrot Top or something. Some sort of, I'd have fun with that. But that's just me. Moving over to a fiction title here. I'm only bringing this out. It's been out for a while. I want to say this came out in June, but it's still on our new arrivals wall, and I'm about to read it. And I thought I'd see how you felt about this. It's been on my radar, and I'm so intrigued. I didn't read her first, Falling, but what do you think?
It's really, really good.
Oh, nice! I thought it would be. It's
really, really good in a really, really bad way.
Yes.
Of course, it's a bad book. It's a dumb, brainless, this premise would never happen thriller. Which you could say about the Bill O'Reilly book. Only this thing is in on its own joke. It knows that it's trying to just amuse you.
Sure.
And I can't leave apart the patrons who are wanting these Bill O'Reilly books. If you want that greasy thrill of knowing that you're reading trash, why not get that thrill from something like this book?
Sure.
Where you're getting that thrill, but you're not debasing yourself to do it.
It's literally 7 steps away. They're 7 steps apart. Very close, proximity-wise. Yeah, so I'm about to, yeah.
It's a totally improbable thriller, a totally improbable premise, but it's so one-dimensional characters, a totally predictable story arc. It very much wants to be a Hollywood movie. But
you're checking all my boxes, Steve. Keep on going.
It's the simple truth. We're not snobs on Cedarburg Public Library Books of the Week. Sometimes you want a book like that.
Right.
All I'm saying is that Bill O'Reilly and people like him tap into that urge and deliver you poison, slow drip poison.
Absolutely. The Yiddish word is chazarai. So, Michigas.
Oh, you would have a word for it, wouldn't
you? Absolutely. So, TJ Newman is her name. She is a former flight attendant. And while she was, 40,000 feet in the air, she was figuring out how can I end these people in creative ways.
Actually, her writer origin story is wonderfully, charmingly, and I believe completely unplanned the mirror of John Grisham's. Yeah. John Grisham beavering away in a law firm, writing on a yellow legal pad on his way to and from work on the train, thinking, how can I make this drudgery into an interesting story? Same thing. And this author deserves the same kind of success.
Certainly. Absolutely. Coffee, tea, or me, or death. That's the next book. Oh boy, what am I doing? All right, I grabbed it. I'm not even gonna give this thing a preamble. I'm just gonna put her right here. You recoiled. I made Steve Donahue recoil. I love it.
Shall we identify the book for our listener-only audience?
Yes, Cassidy Hutchinson is the name. I'm sure you've heard it before, and it has a great title because I feel like I might say it well by the time I read page 14. Enough, or as the Spanish, basta.
This is Cassidy Hutchinson's memoir. It's a Trump book, even though she would object to that. It's a Trump book like these numbers of them that I read. Carlos Lozada and I read these things. We read all of them. This is the historical moment that the publishing industry is in, and I'm not going to ignore that just because I don't like the moment.
Right.
But she will be famous to readers who've never heard of her for her testimony before the January 6th Commission, which I want to point out was not a unilateral commission investigating the events of the armed insurrection on January 6th, only because the Republicans insisted that their members representing them on the commission would be people who were involved in the insurrection. And that was rejected by the Democrats who were in power. And so there were only a handful of Republicans, all of whom have been hounded out of office by the pro-insurrectionist party in the United States government. Cassidy Hutchinson got up in front of that committee, and she looks exactly like Trump wants all of his flunkies to look. He wants them all. He has a way that he wants them to look. And if they look that way, he literally doesn't care if they lose him $80 million in court because they don't know what the F they're doing. He doesn't care about that as long as he has the arm candy bragging rights. She got up in front of that committee and gave utterly damning testimony. The worst element of which was that on January 6th, when then President Trump was informed by the Secret Service and Homeland Security that the people in the crowd were armed, he said, turn off the magnometers that detect guns and let them in. They're not here to hurt me. The easy parenthetical inference being they are here to hurt somebody.
Yeah, right.
But
God.
Cassidy Hutchinson is the one who reported that. I am 100% sure that history will also record the testimony of the other people, the actual agents who heard him say that.
Right,
I'm sure that story is true. And that made Cassidy Hutchinson the bane of the Trump party. She got endless death threats, as everyone does.
Absolutely.
And the hero of the left, who celebrated her courage for getting up there and, in a wavering voice, saying the things that she had seen.
I feel like both reactions are off.
Both reactions are off. Yes. There's one thing you need to. I read enough, and there's one thing while you're rooting your way through fuzzy memories of her irrelevant childhood. There's one thing that I want you to remember. Cassidy Hutchinson is a villain. She's the bad guy. Okay, because she said enough to Donald Trump, saying, let them through with their guns to this public gathering because they're not here to hurt me.
Yeah.
She said enough to that. we don't have to go on at length. We could do a list of the things she did not say enough to.
Right, absolutely.
Like, for instance, promulgating the lie that the election was fraudulent anyway, even though Trump won the first time. Promulgating the lie that Trump won the second time. Kids in cages. A Muslim ban. Constant threats to strip 80 million people of their health care.
Right.
She went along with all of that.
Yeah, she didn't say enough to that. She said, hey, a little more.
Yeah, a little more will be fine. As long as I get to keep my job and write my memoir. And she did write a memoir. That's the thing that burns me about these books, is that these turncoats write books trying to burnish their reputation.
Right. Did that sell? I didn't even check the numbers on it. Did it do all right? I didn't even know.
I'm assuming that, like most Trump books, it did not sell. And I think the reason why the sales on Trump books have tanked has an explanation. That explanation has two words: Bob Woodward.
Yeah.
The worst of these, who I admired for taking down the second worst president of all time. Then he admitted on national television that in interviews for one of his books, the then president of the United States admitted that COVID-19 was incredibly deadly, 5 times worse than the flu, and that he was lying about it to the public.
Yeah.
And Bob Woodward did what any self-respecting reporter would do. He immediately left that room, went to the AP wire room, put that story out on the international news. Oh, no, he didn't. He sat on it.
Yeah.
He sat on it for a year in order to sell his book. And I think that penetrated something here. That penetrated the consciousness somehow here. So that now people are thinking, no, I don't want to read any of this stuff. None of it.
Well, I have one word to say about this particular section of the show. Enough. All right, we're going to move on to, I don't know a darn thing about this. This arrived in the mail yesterday, and I'm just going to throw it out there. Cold Victory by Carl Maulantes is the name. What do you think of this?
Very good author.
Okay.
Very good thriller category. It's a thriller, edge of science fiction type thing. Very stylishly done, very well edited, very well put together. It has the flaws that I now consider completely endemic to 21st century fiction. It's looking over its shoulder at the screenplay the whole time. There are
sure.
When you're reading it, there are commercial breaks. That's bad, right? And also, it doesn't have an ending.
Oh, that's so. Oh my gosh.
The author he basically stops. He remembers one plot line. Didn't I have one plot line going? I should probably wrap that up somehow. But no, darling, you had 4 plot lines going. Is
there a fear of Act 3s right now? Because I am encountering that time and time again, a lack of ending.
I have a theory about it. Of course, if you don't,
we're here for it.
Books of the week without crackpot theories, now do you? I have a theory about it. I have a theory that literally the books are not edited past page 150.
Oh, okay. All
the editor looks, whatever, if there's an editor, they look at up to 150. And then after that, they don't. So no one's, of course, an author is not going to end a book well. Authors are coke-headed morons. An editor is going to end the book well. And if an editor isn't even there at the end of the book, well, then it's just going to, the author's going to wander off into a field like an easily distracted cow.
You sound like my favorite European directors who say, actors, cattle. About authors.
Although, since we're mentioning cattle.
Yes. Oh, fine. I know that look. I know what you're looking for.
Oh, we know she's the reason for last week's success.
I know, that's the saddest part.
I mean, it sure as hell couldn't have been us.
No, absolutely not. Although, Steve, she did, because of her newfound fame, she's being hustled from talk show to talk show, and at one of the studios, it was a horrible accident.
That right there is a picture of my last 4 marriages, ladies and gentlemen.
Watching Steve double over in pain. All right, folks, moving on to a book that these guys have been mentioned on the show before, and we may have been called the low rent version of these gentlemen. And here is Opposable Thumbs. I enjoyed the hell out of this, Steve.
So did I.
I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I enjoyed the hell out of it, which you'd think wouldn't have happened since from the end of the copyright information to the final entry in the index, the whole thing is one big gigantic ragu of steaming hot lies.
Oh, no way, really?
You would enjoy it if that were true, but it is enjoyable anyway.
Well, what I like, and the element I liked about the gentlemen themselves, whatever. You're right. I mean, it certainly seemed like, legend, building up a legend. But I do enjoy the look at the early days of independent television, and I thought that was interesting. But you seem to.
My producer enjoyed the producer bits.
Right.
Enjoyed the bits about getting a show off the ground and making it popular.
The true heroes of the book.
And it's true, they are. And of course, my producer and I would like this show to be popular. I think we're doing just about everything in our power to guarantee that doesn't happen. But nevertheless,
self-sabotage is our brand.
Yes, you enjoyed that part. The producers getting this scrappy thing off the ground when no one had ever done anything like it before and making it a hit. And I enjoyed the critic parts.
Who?
The individual critic parts. Who are the critics? What are the kinds of things? What kind of critics are they?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're going to Franken read the book, I suppose there'll be things in it that you will like. Just remember that nothing in it is true. Nothing at all, except the raw CV elements, where so-and-so worked. And that's only true in the book because there are witnesses that are still alive. Otherwise, that would be lied about as well.
You bring up a good point. Some our nonfiction librarian, of all things, brought up last week on the other masterful CPL radio book show. You may have heard of it.
I haven't. And neither is anybody else.
I just committed the ultimate act of sacrilege on this show, by the way. Steve's pout, by the way, can bring down planes. I'm gonna get TJ Newman again. But she did bring up something that I really.
She has something interesting to say. Did she?
I'm gonna get through this, people. I promise. She said wisely that nonfiction books have no requirement. Modern nonfiction books have no requirement to prove anything they write. And I hadn't thought about that before. I thought, well, it's in the nonfiction section, so obviously it's been vetted and it's been... No, there's no law, there's no edict, there's nothing. This is crazy, no. Steve. What's going on? I never thought about the fact that...
If anything, it's the opposite. If you write a book full of a farrago of lies and someone says, hey, that's a farrago of lies, that's press. That's publicity.
It's just amazing. That's just amazing. I mean, Wisconsin naivete. Although I like to think that this is Wisconsin naivete. Can I bowl like that? Will I do well? Moving on. Another interesting book that kind of like the prior fiction I brought in, Aurora Asher, Sanctuary of the Shadow. Do you have familiarity with this, Steve? This, again, another one that's kind of randomly showed up, and I
don't know. Is your other show familiar?
Have I just take the remainder of this episode?
Those floozies that you're two-timing me with? Do they have anything to say about this book?
What I love is I record Thursday. I record 2 shows. This and the New Book Tuesday. I'm pulled. I'm torn. Well, nonetheless, it will be available at the Cedar Break Public Library.
No, I actually don't know anything about it.
Very good, very good. I'll let you know. It seemed interesting. It's got this on the pages. I mean, so that alone. So there we are. I'll get back to you on that. Do we have time? Yeah, we have time for this. I did want to bring this author up. This has been repackaged, and I picked it up because the holds were skyrocketing. I know you'll have opinions about this. This is Rebecca Yarros, who's experienced some success recently, not with this genre, because this seems to be it's the things we leave unfinished. My favorite bit on the cover here, this gives me the heebie-jeebies as seen on TikTok.
Yes, as seen on TikTok.
What's going on, Steve?
I think it's whether you're reading this book or any of this author's other books, I think it's important to remember that no matter what day on which you are reading any of her books, that day she scream fired someone.
Oh.
It's important to remember that.
I can't imagine that such a thing goes on in this culture.
Yeah, just you wait. Fortunately, you won't fall far, right? Because you've got a beloved other home.
I feel like Salieri right now. Too many notes. You're going too fast. Slow down.
Too many notes. And it'll be fine. The important thing to remember about these, if you write a book like this, you are fair game to be called a grifter. And the important thing to remember about grifters is that they're always lying. That's the whole point. The whole point, the difference, the thing that differentiates a grifter from a liar is that grifters don't believe what they're pushing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't act it. They don't believe it. They just know that you'll buy it.
A topic we can't get away from lately. I mean, right. Just it's every day.
For instance, well, not to give the goon his due, but Bill O'Reilly genuinely is a goon. He genuinely is a South Boston moron. He's not playing that for TV. That got him fired.
Yeah.
That's different from, what's an example that we could, Charlie Kirk, who absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt does not believe the grifting things he's saying. He just knows that the MAGA crowd is an easy mark for money.
Yeah.
I don't have much more to say about this particular book. It's not worth your time, and it bothers me to hear that the holds are skyrocketing. Where do these holds come from?
Well, it is coming from, obviously, and I didn't mention this. I kind of buried her two fantasy books, Fourth Wing and Iron something or other.
Oh, that's got to be it entirely.
Yeah,
right?
It's entirely it. That's exactly it. Yes. People have having a good time with those books, I will say. Seem like those are kind of written for a YA audience, although I hear there's a lot of there's a lot of boots knocking in that those books. I guess there's a lot of as Latka Gravas used to say, nick going on. So
yeah,
which helps.
I don't know that I believe that people are having a good time with those books. They are so bad. I think people are having a good time feeling like they're in a crowd.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too. That is a big part of it.
That bandwagon jumping, it is a fundamental feature of adolescence, and if you notice in your 20s or your 30s, or God forbid that it's still a life, you should take a weekend and uproot it and get rid of it rather than moderate it or give into it. You should get rid of that element of it. Just not belong anymore. If you're so insecure in your 50s that you're still jumping on bandwagons, I don't think there's any other explanation for this author's success. TikTok enhances bandwagon jumping.
Oh, it's the fuel, the fire, absolutely. I would like to point out, of course, that those of you who want to jump on the Books of the Week bandwagon ignore everything.
That bandwagon is perfectly wide open. In fact, it's conspicuously empty of authors.
It's a wagon without wheels.
Maybe they're all going to some other book show.
It's going to take me months to erase this, to erase what I've done in this episode. Moving on, we have Emily Austin writing interesting facts about space.
Yes. I haven't read this one, but I know what it is.
Okay.
There's a yardstick. We dealt with this last week. There's a yardstick for books like this. Do they make you feel welcome? Do they make you feel warm inside? And can they manage to do that without wasting your time, without demeaning you as a reader? That'll be the only question about this thing. I don't know the answer to it one way or another.
It's fast-paced, hilarious, and ultimately hopeful. That's what they're promising. I knew that would rub them the wrong way. Like this show.
The Earth is catastrophically warming.
Indeed.
And there's an asteroid out there called Apophis, Apophis, that is going to strike the Earth in 2029.
29. All right.
All of NASA's scientists are now 100% unanimous in saying it's absolutely not going to strike the Earth. Whatever gave you that idea? No, it's not. Instead, to calm your fears that they may be lying to you, they say it's just going to come close. How close? How close, do you wonder? It's going to come 14,000 miles closer to Earth than the International Space Station.
Ooh. That's like stratosphere type stuff.
That's
man.
Kind of close. That means that once it gets really, really close, a kid in Wisconsin, if he hit it with a BB gun, would divert it to Earth.
Oh, we've been practicing, man.
But ultimately, hopefully, you want to be ultimate. You want your butterflies and your puppies and your ultimate hope. Why don't you go to that other book show?
I think actually someone's bringing a unicorn book today, Steve. just for you. We're gonna wrap up here with something that is kind of something we want to discuss here on the show because we want to do a little financial, and we're close to our Patreon folks. Tightwads and Spendthrifts is the name of the book. Scott Rick, navigating the money minefield in real relationships. And we feel that our viewers, this is a real relationship, probably realer than what you have in your homes. Husbands, children, dogs. No, not dogs, cats.
Your homes don't have the Brock Queen.
They absolutely do not. And, I think that we want to shake you down somehow soon. We're getting close. So
I haven't read this book, but it taps into a subject that is now well known, which is that a huge majority of Americans are financially illiterate.
Yeah. Yes.
Huge
absolutely.
Majority of them. They not only we won't go down the rabbit hole again of how those same Americans consistently vote against their own self-interest.
Right.
So two candidates come to town. One candidate says, "I'm going to make well-paying jobs, 2 factories just outside of town," and the other one comes to town and says, "I'm going to tear down the factories that already exist, and I'm going to bulldozer up your main road and make you pay to get it back." And they vote for the second guy.
Yeah, right.
We'll leave that aside for the minute and just concentrate on the fact that more and more polling information shows, which is that we already know the financial situation in ordinary person America is dire.
Yeah.
I forget the latest statistics down to the details, but something like it's well over 50% of Americans who are polled who could not raise $800 cash in an emergency. They could not do it.
Absolutely.
Don't have any avenues to do it.
Yeah.
And even when you look at less dire figures, they're not much less dire.
Yeah.
You ask, if you do polls like 20,000 people in all 50 states and poll people, or A, do you have more than $10,000 in any kind of saving or retirement fund? And B, do you ever contribute to that fund? The answer to both is no.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the first time since the 1930s, most average Americans are living literally on nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Or they're living
paycheck
to the fumes of paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
They get a paycheck. The paycheck is gone in 6 days, and they're living that last day on fumes.
Yeah.
That's not even paycheck to paycheck, and that's a huge percentage of the country.
Absolutely.
And I haven't read this book, but some of these books put some of that down to financial illiteracy, people not paying attention to their own finances.
Certainly, the author is a behavioral scientist at University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. So it's interesting that a business school would even start filling themselves with behavioral scientists. That's an interesting.
Well, Ross School is great.
Yeah,
they're fantastic. So that's a really good credential.
Nice.
And behavioral science is kind of what we're talking about.
It is, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
I mean, there are some hard realities that aren't behavioral science. We have a rapacious, ultra-rich class that has never been less regulated. It's absolutely, it makes the Gilded Era look like socialism.
Yeah.
And also because of that, because of stock buybacks and gigantic bonuses for every level of the C-suite, right. Americans have not seen a rise in real wage earning power in 30 years.
Yeah.
So those things you can't, as an ordinary person, you can't do anything about.
Absolutely.
These books and places like the Ross School tend to say, there are things you can do something about that you are nevertheless not doing.
Yeah. It's funny that this book comes up. I was driving across town last night, and Mr. Dave Ramsey was on, and I really had not. And he's trying. He does. I mean, with his call-in show, he's helping people out, but then he goes to a very odd place because then he'll start talking about the fact that God and Jesus want you to be poor.
Yeah.
That's a strange angle. So I'm like, is that going to help?
Yeah.
So,
and
this is devoid of that.
The 2 comebacks there for him, for Ramsey and his ilk. God and Jesus does want you to be poor.
He does.
Jesus doesn't say much about much. He doesn't talk about gay people getting married. He doesn't talk about trans people having human rights. But he does talk about...
that's not true.
No matter what Bible you buy for $60, he doesn't talk about that at all. But he does talk about money, and he says you shouldn't have it.
None.
That's riposte number one. And riposte number two to people like that, guys, to say it applies to you too, bub. You go to church every Sunday. It applies to you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although I'm assuming that viewers are curious to know, when you were driving across town, was it furtively to meet with your other book group?
I was driving at full speed. Pedal to the metal, Steve. Broke every traffic law in the state of Wisconsin. Red light. Ha!
I think that picture pretty much summarizes the traffic laws in Wisconsin. It's a question that readers should ask. I'm curious to know if books like this do well at the library.
They do well. They do. Our financial, more and more. And I think, to your point, I think a lot of people, even those in Cedarburg, contrary to the books I sent you last week, Cedarburg actually is a little mini Beverly Hills here on the shores of Lake Michigan, and people are doing okay, and they're still worried. That's what's interesting. They're still worried.
Well, okay, people are doing okay, but there's still playthings of forces beyond their control. People in your upper Midwest Beverly Hills might be doing okay, but there was that day last week when their 401k plan lost $30,000 in one day.
I remember that.
They didn't know it was going to happen. And no. It has inched its way back, but if it had lost another $30,000 the day after that, they also wouldn't have been able to control that.
Right.
And I think because of those realities that I talked about, Americans are earning less on the dollar. They're facing higher prices, and they're facing a plutocratic class that wants to enslave them. Not just pauperize them, but enslave them. I think you should belong to me as property. And then I'll give you gruel once in a while and let you reproduce every once in a while.
Absolutely.
Americans are facing those realities. And I think when they face those realities, they just don't want to look at their finances at all, even the parts they can control. They just don't want to look at it at all. It's all shrouded in depression.
Without a doubt. Absolutely.
That's bad.
Yeah.
It's a natural response, but it's a bad one.
Absolutely. Well, Tightwads and Spendthrifts available here now, and as property of Steve, as plaything of Steve, I would like to, of course, thank him as always for coming on our airwaves and talking books and brats. I guess we are the Dairy State, Steve, and sometimes we combine all the best of everything we do. Anyway, this has been Books of the Week for another week. Always fun. We are, of course, brought to you every week at this time, whatever time you're watching us, by the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library and the Friends. Steve.
True
Yes.
Story.
Yes.
One of the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library, at the pinnacle of any anecdote that they're telling, also gets a blank look on their face and wanders out into a field like a cow. And it's not the one you think.
I was wondering what that was.
Wondering why we keep finding that person out in the field.
I didn't call the authorities. I thought it was normal. So what can you do? All right, fantastic. Have a wonderful reading week, everybody. And Steve, have an even more wonderful reading week because we're banking on it.
And somehow we will see you next week.
It's shocking and wonderful. What a country. Just remember 2029, we're going off the air, according to Steve. Take care. Till next week. Bye-bye.